Good morning. My name is Casey Morris, and I will be the moderator for today's episode of EYEJ Speaks. Thank you to all who joined us last week for the conversation on achieving a positive mindset. EYEJ Speaks is an interactive community discussion that features engaging and empowering discussions on social justice and civic engagement issues. The topics you see here today are derived from topics discussed in EYEJ's core program for youth, YODJ Youth Online Discussing Justice. Whether you are watching us on Facebook or Zoom, be sure to ask questions, make comments, and use the hashtags EYEJ Speaks and social justice in the comment section. Also, if you haven't done so already, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. EYEJ serves over 1,500 youth annually with the mission of empowering and amplifying the voices of teens and preteens by bridging them with diverse individuals to engage in interactive discussions centered around social justice. We do so through programs including Youth Online Discussing Justice, which is a 12-week program for 6 to 12th graders. That was created as a response to the pandemic to ensure youth had a virtual platform to exchange ideas and gain perspective on social justice issues with a diverse and empowered community members, peers, and volunteers twice weekly. The Youth Council. The EYEJ Youth Council is a group of impressive youth aged 15 to 25 from all across districts in Cleveland who are together brainstorming issues, injustices, and challenges both they and their peers face in their community. We cannot do this work without your help. Thank you to all who have donated to our Empower campaign. Specifically, your support will enable EYEJ to deploy 2 programs in which technology and online instructional infrastructure needed to deliver learning programs while youth remain sheltered in place, and help EYEJ Youth Council members and their families to cover household costs for bills, healthcare, food, and more. If you want to continue to support our work and ensure we can provide impactful programming to the youth of Cleveland, text the word EMPOWER, that's EMPOWER, to 44321. Again, that's EMPOWER to 44321 to donate to the Empower campaign. We want you to be a part of this great programming and also part of the EYEJ family, so be sure to check out the hashtag Empower Giving campaign going on right now. Today's conversation is about investing in your future. The traditional conversation happening in homes across the country is that college is a must. You hear it from your parents, grandparents, teachers, and guidance counselors, but one size doesn't fit all. When it comes to one's pathway to success, just look at Steve Jobs. He went to college, he dropped out, traveled throughout India, became a vegan, before coming back to the States to co-found one of the world's most recognizable brands, Apple. We will discuss why there are multiple pathways to a thriving future and how young people can determine which one of those pathways is right for them. We have an impressive panel of educators, entrepreneurs, and skilled tradesmen to discuss their unique take on the topic. Today's speakers include Charu Ramanathan, co-founder and CEO of Vital Exchange; Talia Anguiano, student admissions lead, Noble Network of Charter Schools; Justin McLaughlin, founder and CEO of Air CFO; Katie Ross, program director for EYEJ; and Frank Austin, a trade school student. Thank you all for joining today's panel. To kick off the discussion today, Katie, can you explain to the audience how does today's theme of investing in your future related to EYEJ's mission, and what role does this work play in the organization's focus on social justice?
Yeah, thank you, Casey. So, like you mentioned, there are several paths to success. And it's important to recognize that intelligence is not necessarily confined to academics, and that everyone excels in a different way. And so, a lot of high schools are predominantly focused on tracking students and leading to success in college. They're not necessarily giving them other options and understanding that it just takes certain character traits and drive and passion to be an entrepreneur. So EYEJ really tries to incorporate other options and give these students access and resources so that they can explore what they would like to do. And if it may not be going to college, that's okay. You can still succeed. You can still be a leader. And understanding that there's not just one path that you have to go on.
Yeah, completely agree. Children are often told the pathway to career success is to go to college and get a job in life, but as we all know, one size doesn't fit all. So, Frank, you're currently in trade school, another avenue people can take for professional success. Can you speak about your decision to attend trade school and what the experience has been like for you?
Yes, yes, I am in the trade school for Ford. I'm in the Ford Asset program. Um, it's actually been fun. Being in it make me want to learn more and other things other than just my trade now. Because the reason I decided to go to a trade is when I move like to a different city or state, I want to be able to always be employed. So that's why I decided to go to a trade.
What so what are you studying in the Ford Asset program?
To be a master technician.
Okay, awesome. Congratulations, and we all we're rooting for you and we're invested in your success. Just wanted to know.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
When I'm done with the Ford Asset program, I will be returning back for high performance and business manufacturing.
That's awesome. So it's a blend of understanding the business practice as well as the technical background of manufacturing.
Yeah, because we do take a business class how to run our own shop. But when I said the manufacturing, because I want to make high performance auto parts and sell my own brand. So
awesome. Yeah, that's really great. Having that type of holistic view of not just understanding, the technical aspects, but how to, enter the second level. How to run a shop, how to manage the business. How to, perform bookkeeping. So that it's really great that you get the hands-on and as well as the classroom experience.
yeah.
So to continue, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. For more than 52% of entrepreneurs, they were the first to start a business in their families. 77% start their business from personal funds, and 22.5% of small businesses fail within the first year. So the odds are already stacked against many companies before they even start. So Justin and Charu, you both have such unique businesses and pathways to becoming CEOs. Can you share your stories and how you were able to overcome some of the challenges executives face? Oh, Shari, you're still muted.
Sorry, there was a lot of background noise. So yeah, no, I think that one of the key things is that entrepreneurs do have some very fundamental traits that make them quirky. One is that they're very, I'm a risk taker. So that's a key component of it. And then the other part is really tenacious. Like once I hook onto something that I'm very interested in and I want to find a solution to, I can foolishly work on it for hours and hours and hours. So I think those are aspects that that I've carried through. I don't. I'm not very warm to the word executive because that's kind of a hierarchical word that positions a person above everybody else in the company. I would really see myself as I like the word entrepreneur because it's someone that if they're repeatedly identifying a problem, they figure out that they can solve it not just for themselves but also be able to scale it to others and therefore make a fair profit for giving it to others and so on and so forth. And to me, one of the things in EYEJ, and I've heard this from my Met members of the Youth Council, is really people that are, necessity is the mother of invention, and really growing up out of a less optimal circumstance can really lead to getting very good ideas that, if seeded, could relate in a substantial proportion of entrepreneurs coming out of adversity and adverse situations. Then my dad always said inventions and innovations don't happen on a full stomach, they actually happen under starvation. So it's really, I mean, there is so much potential here with the EYEJ, the students and the families that we serve. So I'm super excited to be part of the organization and be speaking here.
Awesome. Justin.
Yeah, so my very brief story is, I was working more or less in accounting and finance for a startup out in San Francisco, and my path that led me to start my company was my idea came out of kind of what I would call a pain point. It was like an issue that I noticed for a lot of these like tech startup companies in the Bay Area out on the West Coast, and I think that's really important. That helped me overcome a lot of challenges that I see in other entrepreneurs, which is, a lot of times people will go off, kind of put their head down and try to build something, and then, return to the market, so to speak, and hope that it's kind of embraced. Whereas, like, I saw it on the ground firsthand, an issue around startup accounting and startup finance. Another thing that I did to kind of overcome some of the challenges that other people might face is quite honestly, like, I didn't quit my job until I had my first paying customer, at least for the route I took, which is a bootstrapped route, meaning essentially I didn't go seeking outside investors to invest in my company. So to this day, I still own, 100% of the company, which is what I wanted. I had to make sure that I could still kind of put food on the table, pay my rent, before I quit my job. So that was, two kind of important things for me. And then the third one, which is kind of like what I would consider my superpower, if I have one, is just I have a relentless drive for customer service and customer satisfaction in the early days. So whatever you're good at, whatever drives you and motivates you, focus in on that, and then that's going to, for me anyway, it led to client referrals, which is like grown our business to be well over 100 clients at this point. So those are some of the things that I focused on early on.
So, Charlie mentioned, necessity as a driver of invention and change. Justin, what do you think was the necessity that drove you to become an entrepreneur?
The necessity in the marketplace of why the idea that I launched. So just really briefly, my company serves as kind of an accounting, tax, and finance department for early stage startups. And what happens often in some of these well-funded startups is they're given hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars early on from venture capitalists. And what has to happen almost immediately is the company, the founders have to do things like set up payroll, make sure they're reporting to the board of directors, make sure they stay compliant with state and federal taxes. And there's all these little, there's all these we call them back office kind of tasks that have to happen with a company, especially one that's holding on to a pretty large amount of money. But the issue is the necessity for them is like, they really don't have time. A lot of the founders that we work with are computer engineers or marketing experts. They don't have time to go learn how to use QuickBooks or set up payroll, but they know they need to get it done. So the necessity is they got to get it done. They really don't have time. And quite frankly, they don't really want to focus on it. And it's really expensive to go hire a bunch of full-time employees, full-time accountants and CFOs to do all this stuff. So what we did was we packaged together kind of this part-time outsourced team that can handle all these tasks from bookkeeping, which is relatively simple, all the way to like financial strategy, which is a little bit more involved. And that's really where the idea for my company came out, came to be.
Yeah, this leads us into our next question. There's a saying that your network is your net worth. So what are some of the steps necessary to begin investing in the right type of network? And how do you know when you've created a valuable one? This is open to anyone.
I'll go first. This is absolutely true. And I think I learned this later in life because I grew up in the Indian culture where relationships with responsible adults, whether they are your parents or your teachers, are dictated for you more than, like seeking it out and finding people, maybe a professor that doesn't teach you, but you've seen his podcast that you like and things like that. So absolutely, it's so important because it gives you your mind another horizon to grow into by really connecting yourself with mentors. And these mentors can come, could be a person that sits next to you on the bus. And it could be someone that they are actually leading something, or they're doing something that could be that teaches you something. So it could be even mentors that are more ephemeral in their in the transactions you have with them, or it could be someone that you seek out and reach out. And it's amazing how much response young people will get if they reach out to people saying, "Hey, I saw your profile, I heard you speak, I heard your podcast. You said we could contact you. Here's who I am, and here's why I want to talk to you." And really build on that, because doors will open. People trust other people they know. So it's really important that, and you learn a lot, you grow a lot. It's just, you grow so much by mentorship. So I would definitely say it's the number one skill that you need to train yourself on. And I say train because I'm an introvert by nature. So it's really like difficult for me to go up to someone and say, "Hey, you need to mentor me." So really it's the best strategy. It's one of the best and most fruitful strategies for anything, personal and professional.
Yeah, it's really important to be able to seek that advice in all aspects. Whether if you're making a decision from small to large, to have someone that you trust that you can reach out to, that can help lead you in the right direction. It's hugely important. Kelly, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was younger, I would always hear this phrase said, "It's not about what you know, it's about who you know." And I never really understood what that meant. It didn't really click in my mind as a teenager. I'm like, why would I not get, hired for a job based off of the experiences and based off of the knowledge that I've learned in school? And it wasn't until I got to grad school and started building out those mentorship relationships and that professional network where it all started to click when I started my job search after graduation, where I was getting plugged in and connected to different areas and different universities and institutions across the country. So absolutely agree with what was said earlier with this question, like people trust people that we know. And I think building out professional network, like through LinkedIn, even through Twitter, like I have so many different professional contacts that I've, just by interacting and tweeting back and forth with on different issues in the field that I'm currently in. Just by doing that alone has allowed me to build up my professional network and whatnot. And just at the age of 25, I feel like I have connections all over the country. And if I ever need something on the West Coast, East Coast, like wherever it may be, I have folks everywhere. So I'm definitely happy that I've had mentors and folks that I can reach out to help me build out the professional network. And that's something that I really try to instill in the students that I work with, like currently on a day-to-day basis, is like the earlier that you can start building out that professional network to build up that net worth, it's better. So yeah, that's my take on it. And everything that was told to me when I was younger, back in like high school and my early years in college, like everything makes a lot more sense that I'm actually working full time and in the professional world.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that technology enables us to do is create these expanded networks, right? So if you don't have the opportunity of having, the person next to you on the bus being that trusted advisor, if you do some research and seek out people online, Twitter, LinkedIn, sometimes it's meetups that help you create that network. So finding ways of enabling yourself to be in the right place it's hugely important. Frank, who is one role model that helped you see the importance of investing in your future, and what advice did they give you?
Yeah, so there's quite a few people, because I was the 2019 Youth of the Year, and with that, because I mean, I've met a lot of my mentors at the Boys and Girls Club. Then from there, it pretty much expanded because I was with P16 MyCom with Natalie Friedel, and once I met her, I started doing like a lot of public speaking, and I thought it was something I thought I wasn't gonna like to do until actually I done it. But it'll be like the people at the Boys and Girls Club and Natalie Friedel and her family.
I want to return to you, Talia. You work for Noble Network of Charter Schools, which has 18 campuses in Chicago. One example of the network's success was cited on the education website, the 74th, stating Noble's college counseling and alumni support program has led to students graduating from college 3 to 5 times the national average. Please talk about your work as a student admission lead and any conversation had with youth about alternatives to traditional college, the traditional college pathway, either in your current or previous roles. I know it's a big question, but basically we want to hear about the great work you're doing at Noble College.
Sure, definitely. So right now as a student admissions lead, my role is to get students enrolled into high school. And then once they're in the high school, we pass them all along to like our alumni and college counselors to get them out of, high school in the traditional like 4 years and whatnot, and then go off to college or whatever their pathway looks like after graduation. So I'm constantly on the day-to-day doing like enrollment paperwork, making sure that we're trying to make the pipeline into education here in Chicago as barrier-free and as accessible as possible. Because we recognize over at our Noble Network, the populations it is that we work with and serve on a day-to-day basis are, communities that don't have the funding in their school districts or in their communities just generally that wealthier communities would be able to have access to on a day-to-day basis. So throughout this pandemic, for example, we've distributed Chromebooks to every single student in our network to make that enrollment and registration process easier for the folks it is that we work with, to make remote learning more accessible and all of that good stuff. So we're always about accessibility and making sure that everything's translated into the languages it is that we work with the communities we work with and whatnot. So that's my role. That's what I do on a day-to-day basis. Right now, we're working on a lot of Excel formulas. So if anyone listening to this broadcast here has any experience and is really experted in Excel, please let me know afterwards because I need a lot of help figuring out different formulas online. Anyways, that was just a quick side, a plug in there. So as far as like, I work specifically with 9th graders and entering and transferring high school students. So our college counselors are the ones that do the bulk work of what high school, or what life looks like post high school. So currently, I don't do a lot of work within that realm. However, when I used to be a graduate student at Kent State University, I just graduated from there a year ago with my master's degree. I did a lot of work in the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. As well as when I was a student back in Des Moines, Iowa, I did a lot of work with the Des Moines Metropolitan School District there. And the bulk of my work across both of those institutions in these two areas was to go out to high schools and speak to students about what college readiness looks like. And it wasn't until I got to grad school that we changed our college readiness mindset to just the life readiness mindset. So a lot of the work and workshops that I created and facilitated with high school students on a monthly basis were around all right, let's work on what a resume looks like and what a personal statement looks like. But how can we also tailor that to make sure that a resume can also be applicable to like a job that you want to apply for if college isn't the thing that you want to do after high school. If we want to work on, bettering our ACT scores and SAT scores, that's cool. But how can we also tailor our workshop material to, just incorporate better study habits just generally across the board, just to get you to, be successful throughout the last 2 years of your high school experience. I work primarily with juniors and seniors. So that's a little bit of the work that I've done in my previous roles. And it's always been neat to see, like, when I would walk in, they would just like, I had to build trust with the students first, right? But after being able to build trust and let people know that I'm not just the college lady coming in to talk about college, but like I want to come in and chat with you all about different, pathways that can still let you be successful in life that don't include having to go to a traditional 4-year college. It was always really neat to see how much more open the students would be talking to me about what it is they wanted to do afterwards. So I'm personally a big believer, and people always kind of look at me sideways when I say this, like, just me being an educator, like, I don't think that college is for everybody, and I think that that is totally okay. But as long as we are providing our students in our high schools with the opportunities and with the overall vision that you can still be successful without a college degree, and providing them the tools and resources to get there, in my eyes, that's a win in my book. And that's the mindset that I try to instill in the students that I work with in various nonprofits that I work with, and then students that I've worked with in the past as well.
That's a great answer. Thank you, by the way, for your work in distributing those Chromebooks, getting, the youth access to technology, making sure that they remain connected. That's something that's going to be hugely important, and that's something that the Youth Council is working on in our connectivity program this upcoming year. If we all do our own little part to make sure that communities stay connected, we can help close the widening gap between people who have access to technology and the people who don't. One thing that comes to mind is there's a theory called the fourth industrial revolution, wherein your skills in technology and your ability to understand technology and adapt to the changes in technology is going to determine your future. So whether that's in mechanical work, whether that's in applied technologies, applied sciences, just having the access to technology is going to be a huge differentiator for the youth. So again, thank you for doing that. And I want to pivot to Katie. Following on to what Talia was discussing, for young people who are still navigating career opportunities, what advice can you provide to help them understand what next steps they should take? And for their parents and caretakers, how can they support the young people in their lives and follow a professional path that leads to success?
Yeah, thank you, Casey. I think everyone's kind of spoken on this a little bit in regards to exposure. And so getting these students and youth exposed to other options. So, making their lens larger than just a four-year college mindset. And so I think it's a combination of two things. Like in regards to giving youth specific advice, I think youth and parents of youth, I think it's important to think about what are you passionate about? What do you love to do? And how can you market that? How can you utilize those skills to lead you to success? It doesn't have to necessarily take you into school, but let's find something that you're going to want to be committed to and want to be invested in and resilient towards throughout a long period of time. And so sometimes these students who feel the demand to make money because they have to, or they have to make just enough to have food on the table or to support their families. It's like, how can we provide them the resource and the tools to be able to say, hey, you know what do I really want to do? Where does my passion lie? And how can I utilize that to further my my future. And so I think for students and youth, giving them exposure to entrepreneurs, giving them opportunities to engage in public speaking, like Frank said, whether it's having them do a pitch challenge and exposing them to what entrepreneurship entails, allows them to have more of an option and reflect on, okay, I'm passionate about X, Y, and Z, or I actually really like doing this. Okay, let's take it a step further. How can we utilize those skills in a way that's marketable? So I really think the key is exposure and connecting these students and these youth to people that have been entrepreneurs. They can build their network, ask the questions, as well as telling students, what are you passionate about beyond cutting the bills, and how can we utilize that to strengthen your skills in your future?
Great answer. And again, being an entrepreneur comes in many different forms. Sometimes it is trekking out on your own. Sometimes it is forging your own path. Sometimes it is, utilizing your entire network to take on 3 or 4 different things. Like Justin mentioned, who is working a 9 to 5 and still, building and building and building his company until he got his first paying customer. Once you and having the experience of, like, once you know that your idea has validity, that people are willing to pay money for what you have and what you've created and what you've come up with, it's an amazing feeling. So I think that when we discuss entrepreneurship, a lot of people have this preconceived mindset of, I'm striking out, I'm on my own, I'm just doing it, just hustling. But you really have to have the building blocks of a network of people that are there to support you, of advisors, of mentors, asking advice, seeking help. And that can be, the difference between success and failure. The people that you have in your network and the people that you can reach out to. So, I think building that foundation of great support is extremely important. Does anybody want to hop in here and, discussing building that foundation and how to, how to establish that network specifically as it relates to, the quarantines and lockdowns that we're under right now. If you can't get out there and, have those, just once in a lifetime encounters at the grocery store, you can't engage in conversation because you're wearing a mask. Like, what are some other ways of building a network, via online, via technology, or however? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to speak to some things that I do. I maybe for the young people that aren't, on LinkedIn yet or something like that. To me, networking starts when you're young. It starts, with who you surround yourself with, your classmates. I mean, the reason I went out to San Francisco, I grew up in Northeast Ohio, but the reason I went out to San Francisco is because one of my closest friends that grew up with me right here in Northeast Ohio kind of went out there first and got a company started. And then he kind of pulled me out to San Francisco to open my eyes outside of Cleveland area. So, I have somebody, he was somebody I grew up with since I was in 3rd grade. So, don't look past kind of your immediate network. Surround yourself with people that have kind of big visions and big goals for themselves as well. Secondly, if you already are kind of in the professional world, I have a lot of meetings every single week. I do sales, I do marketing, I do partnership development, and like at the end of every single week on Friday, I have a small calendar reminder for myself, which is like, go back through your calendar for the week and send out. I use LinkedIn. I don't really do Twitter or anything else, so I do LinkedIn, and I always connect with the people in my that I met that week, and you kind of send them a short little blurb in the request to connect and say, hey, it was great to connect. Glad we got a chance to talk about X, Y, and Z. I'd love for you to join my my network on LinkedIn. And I mean, I do that religiously every Friday afternoon, and I think I have like 2,200 connections. And you know, to I think it was Talia's point, like I have kind of, you know, friends and network now, not even just in the United States, but even outside of the U.S. from doing that. So something small, but over time, really kind of builds up my network.
Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I can step in here, and same thing. I use LinkedIn quite a bit. But one of the things that I've noticed, and since this conversation is about young people and influencing young people, what I've noticed, as both as a professional and as a parent to a 21-year-old and a teenager, is it is like pulling teeth to get young people to contact older people. I don't know why. But the reality is adults love interaction with children, right? Because it kind of reminds us of the possibilities. So if I have somebody reach out to me via LinkedIn saying, hey, I know you started these companies, I'm thinking of starting on my own, 100% chance I'm taking that call. And the reason is because it's just so, it keeps us evergreen, right? It keeps us evergreen. And unfortunately, I see like 9 out of 10 kids not taking that opportunity because they're afraid, they're intimidated. What's the worst that can happen? Crickets. You don't hear anything back. No harm, no foul. You just get it done, right? So I would encourage, go out of your comfort zone. You know, go to LinkedIn, do a search, find the people that you think are really impressive, and reach out to them and see what happens.
Yeah, it's you know, getting over that intimidation about your own personal skills, right? It's like, you know, I'm just starting out. You know, can I talk to this person who has tons of experience? But you have to remember that that person needed to reach out to somebody to be able to get that experience in the first place, right? So you're right. Getting over that fear is hugely important. And the secret is, for the most part, nobody really knows what they're doing at the start of it anyway. We're all trying to figure it out, and that's, you know, and that's a big thing. You know, the expectation that you're talking to an expert when really they're figuring it out day to day, just like everybody else. So Frank, I saw you go off mute.
Yeah. I wanted to speak on a question like connecting. One thing that we used to do was in our program, they pretty much made us meet like 3 people a day, and then she like, now I'm in the third federal housing program to buy my first house, and the people that's in there, cause I'm the youngest one in the program, but the people that's in there are pretty interesting because you know, they older, but they know some stuff I didn't know about the housing, like the inspectors and all the other extra stuff you got to buy for even actually owning the house. But it was nice to know that they can help. And like you said, like me with LinkedIn, I don't have a LinkedIn, but I do meet a lot of people that does have that, and they get like real good reviews on it. So yeah, and other than LinkedIn, you can do a search on Instagram or Facebook to find a group chat that pretty much strikes your interest, like you said. And even so, like when you go to school and stuff, like your counselors, they may know somebody that could help you. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a, you know, you have a tool belt. You're using all the tools in your tool belt. You know, whether it's Instagram, I remember Talia said Twitter. You know, you can use LinkedIn, group chat can be great. Yeah, you know, even sending out emails to you know, people they come across. You might have an old business card, you know, of someone who can help spark an idea or spark an interest. Let's go ahead and take some questions from the audience. Let me pull some of these up. Looks like we don't have any questions from the audience just yet. Let's continue the discussion. I think, we're in a really great flow. So we've discussed, building your network, um, making sure that you're investing in your future by, being passionate, by making sure you have that drive, for something that you're going to work on for hours and hours at a time. There's, Malcolm Gladwell, the 10,000-hour expert, but Natalia and Katie, I want to ask from an educator standpoint, what are the larger discussions that need to be had in school systems about the roles of non-traditional education and career pathways such as trade schools and entrepreneurship?
I can go ahead and jump in first. I'd say that I think there just overall needs to be more discussion on, pathways that are away or moving away from the traditional 4-year college pathway. Like I remember when working with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, like I would bring up trade schools, I would bring up, entrepreneurship, different avenues for you to take after high school graduation. And everyone just looked at me with wide eyes like, did this lady really come in and say that I don't have to go to college after graduation? And it was just such a surprise and shock to everyone. And I remember it was a really interesting experience and just vibe to be in generally in that classroom when, comments and ideas like that were brought up, because it just opened up a whole new world of opportunities and avenues for our youth to think about outside of what societally is conditioned and ingrained for us to think about growing up and going into high school. So I'd say that that's just number one. There needs to just be more conversation and more research done in our secondary institutions about other ways that you can be successful after graduation. I think societally we've been conditioned and there's this construct to think that like college is the only way that you can be successful, and I think we're just now starting to divert from that mindset. But I think that we need to do a better job of, one, not only diverting from that mindset but also taking a step back to think as secondary educators, like what is inaccessible and inequitable about that mindset. Like not everyone has the resources to be able to attend a 4-year institution. And quite frankly, higher education here in the US doesn't do a very good job of providing the linguistic accessibility or just access in general, and how, various communities can actually sit and understand the language and the application process and FAFSA and scholarships and all of that stuff. Like it just, for a lot of folks, me included, being a first generation college student, like it just didn't make a lot of sense. I was reading gibberish, and even now, like I've worked in universities before. I have a master's in higher education administration, and a lot of the lingo used in the application process and trying to make college more accessible for everyone is still very much inaccessible because it just doesn't make sense to a lot of people. And I think that just first and foremost, like I think we as a society, but specifically in our high schools, like need to take a step back and recognize that it's just, unfortunately at this point right now in society, like it's just, college access is a very inequitable process and very inaccessible to a lot of different communities, especially the ones that we as EYEJ like work with on a day-to-day basis. And if we want to make that process more accessible and equitable for everyone, we need to make sure that we are advocating for the funding and resources to get the people and the tools and whatnot into our schools to make that process more accessible and equitable for everyone. I can go on a soapbox about like college and accessibility and inequitable practices for like hours, but I think that's diverting from the traditional mindset and also taking a step back to see what is problematic and inequitable by mindset, in my opinion, are two things that need to be talked about a little bit more in our pre-K through 12 school systems.
Yeah, and I think that you're absolutely right. It's like putting that pressure on young people to take on, massive amounts of debt to pursue something that you're not entirely sure about. It's a challenge. But if you, if you have as much information as possible, if you can, guide them to help make the right decisions, hopefully college does work out for you. But just understand that there are tons of different pathways out there, and you don't necessarily need to take the road traveled by many. You know, there's a Walt Whitman quote in there somewhere. I can't remember what it is. if you find the pathway that works best for you, just make sure that that you are going to work at it, that you are going to put your all behind it, that it is something that you can't sit down for hours and focus on, because otherwise, why are you doing it? Time is something that none of us can afford to waste. Katie, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we can't really talk about opportunities without talking about equitable systems in which opportunities are there for students. And so, not to continue on this soapbox, but it's incredibly important. And so, within EYEJ, and I already talked about this earlier, it's about exposure. And so, how can we give them those tools and resources? And to kind of harp back on technology, as we talked about earlier, the digital divide in Cleveland makes it very difficult for students to think outside the box and find those mentors and take those risk-taking opportunities to connect with people that could increase their network and widen their lens. And so it comes back down to, talking to educators, talking to systemic issues about why is this access not available for all, because we can't even talk about students creating networks if they don't have access onto the internet to look people up on LinkedIn. So it's almost taking a few steps back and finding what are the equitable opportunities that we need to improve on as a society so that opportunities equal, and therefore then we can talk about other options. Because if students can't access those options, it's not even, we can't even put it on the table yet. We can't even start talking about character traits and risk taking and vulnerability, which is all part of being an entrepreneur. And I want to speak on one other aspect about trust that was mentioned earlier as well. A lot of these students who have talked to adults and mentors in the past, their trust was broken, or the adult failed them in some capacity. And so not only are we dealing with the students putting themselves out of their comfort zone and reaching out to these mentors and adults, but it's how do they build the trust first? And that's difficult in the population that we work with EYEJ.
We have a couple questions in the Zoom Q&A. This one's from Kimberly. Hello, I'm Kimberly Sconehorse. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. From the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. I wanted to share a resource for middle school and high school students that we're putting on for kids. Virtual Camp Youth 360, a free, fun, virtual youth development summer camp to learn about healthy relationships, affirmative consent, and more information and registration can be found here. We'll share the link to the Rape Crisis Center, the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, by Kimberly. This next question is anonymous. This question is for the business owners on the panel. With the current economic climate for entrepreneurs, how are you navigating during this time, and what advice would you give to small business owners who are challenged at this time?
I shared some of my comments already in that chat box, but the biggest thing is, in my opinion, like focus on what you can control, not on the uncontrollable. There's just so much that you're not going to be able to control. You can't control when there's a vaccine. You can't control when things are going to get back to normal. I mean, depending on your business model, you're going to be impacted so much more than other people. So I, focused on what you can control. At Air CFO, almost immediately after after probably mid-March, end of March, we all kind of, and I say we, like our leadership team, there's 5 of us on our leadership team, we knew that we needed to have very uncomfortable kind of conversations and very uncomfortable planning situations, which is like, hey, what if it gets really bad, right? And for us, that means, potentially letting go or laying off people. So we went through some different scenario planning on how we would deal with that. And just by going through that exercise of preparing for it, kind of like, alleviates that mental anxiety and mental stress of like having that big gray cloud over us. So we did that. Thankfully, we never got to that point. And I think the other thing I mentioned in there was like, now that we're 3 to 4 months in, I would expect it to be like this for another 3 to 6 months, at least. So hopefully you've learned in the last 3 months, like how this did impact your business. I mean, I have no idea what the business is, but like if you're in food service or something like that, hopefully you can pick up some tips from other food service companies as far as the delivery that they've gone to. Obviously, it's going to affect every business different. I mean, we don't take it for granted, but in our business, for example, we've grown during this virus. We're a remote team. We work on Zoom like this every day. That's how we provide our service to our clients, is remotely. So for us, we just kind of like double down on that and like kind of give our clients peace of mind that like we're not going anywhere. We're here. This is actually nobody was planning for anything like this, and I don't take joy in the fact that other companies are affected more, but like just giving peace of mind to our clients that like we're still here and we'll be here. So I think the other thing I said in there was I'd be happy to chat more if the person wants to email me and just tell me about their business so that I can kind of brainstorm and bounce around ideas.
So Frank, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to speak on the school aspect. Well, I went to Max SAs. I don't know about that school, same SD on the west side. But that is a trade driven school, high school. We have welding, CNC, CAD, auto body, auto, diesel. Pretty much, it's a trade school. One of the problems that was there was a lot of kids that was there that was not there for trades. It was using as like a regular traditional high school, and they was there because it was close to their house, or either their brothers or their friends go there, and it was really there not for the trade. And why would you spend 4 years doing a trade when you don't want to actually do it? Because in my class, I think it was only 4 kids actually pursued auto. Most of them went to actually pick up nursing and a lot of other stuff. But I feel like like on the east side we have nursing and stuff, and on the west side they have like more sort of trades. If they had them on both sides of the city, it'd be a better choice for people to pick their high school. Maybe a better transition if they want to go to college or either do a trade path.
So did you want to jump in?
I think that's a very broad question going back to the business. In COVID times, I've had, I'm on the board of a couple other businesses. One of them actually is in the lending business, and they found that lenders wanted to do a risk analysis. So they pivoted to a risk analysis product because everyone wants to understand the changes in the market. So they did a pivot. Another company here, which is called OntFlow, it's based out of Columbus. The entrepreneurs, look it up, absolutely bubbly personality, very young, didn't finish college and found her path, was manufacturing female hygiene products, dispensers, and products for employers. And so when COVID hit, employees were not going into work. So she pivoted her business using the same materials that are used for making female hygiene products into making masks. So this is where the entrepreneurial mindset kicks in. Is you really step back as a business owner, and as Justin said, really control what you can. Don't try to control. A lot of the you can see a lot of narrative on social media. It's like, why did this happen? Or the politicians are not dealing with it. None of that is in our control, and we can't even control the virus, right? So if we can't control the research that goes in. We can't control when vaccines would be available. None of that is. So what we can control is how we feel about it and what are we doing about it with respect to our businesses. And like in Justin's case, really saying I have a team that works, I have to do right by them, really sorting out those kind of key things. Like what are the key things that I need to sort out so that I can, do right by the people that have trusted in me. Do I, put it on ice, meaning take a step back and wait? Do I go after all the possible relief vehicles, the PPP loans, and this, that, and the other that the government has put in place? Probably run out of money by now, most of those. But those are kind of the strategies. Do I stay in a holding pattern? Do I move aggressively forward? So my own business, Vital Exchange, is a COVID accelerated business in the sense that we are digital connectivity and a social network solution for patients. So with COVID, patients became incredibly isolated. So Vital Exchange, which we just started, now has to accelerate its plans so that we're able to provide, social network for our patients. Going back to the whole education, I really do believe that digital connectivity will democratize education, just like it's democratizing healthcare. I have to now call, wait in line, 90 days later, I get an appointment. Guess what? COVID has made telehealth available in everyone's home. So as long as you have a digital connection, you can get the doctor's appointment much shorter because, it's coming to you via your mobile phone. So similar to that, I do believe education will get democratized. There's already tons, massive amounts of content in terms of coming from top tier universities to basically do anything from corporate finance to calculus is available. So if we can give that bridge to the children, then they would be able to access it. Just like Frank over here is going to trade school because he recognized what he wanted to do and that it had presence anywhere he geographically moved. That's so important to recognize. If you're able to find what that passion and interest of yours is, then you should be able to access it via the internet. I mean, in fact, almost all the schools now are going to go online. And as a parent that pays a hefty sum of money to a university to get my children educated, I can tell you that now everything's online. They're at home. My grocery bills are going up and I'm paying the dorm money because the children are not going to be there. So these are now parents are like, what the heck am I doing? But in that case, and the kids are like, what am I getting additional that I didn't get in the comfort of my living room? Yes, the social part, of course. But the social part is facilitated by a campus, not by the quality of their education. So that part is going to change. And here it's ripe for entrepreneurship, right? It's ripe for someone to say, like Singularity University, for example, it's someone to say that, yeah, I'm going to disrupt education. It's ripe for it's highway robbery. I can tell you, it really puts a wall. Education should be something that everybody has access to.
That's a fact. And I think that's a great point to close out on. But before we do, I want to ask each of you to give a 1-minute summary of one key point that you hope that viewers can take away from this conversation of investing in your future. Frank, I'll let you kick it off.
When we was talking about networking, I do feel like that is a big point, especially on when you want to pursue something. Because when you're going in, you're kind of going into kind of blind. You don't know as much as the person that's been in there for a few years. So, like I said, networking.
Sally, you want to go next?
Sure, definitely. I think just for our high school students, listening to this either currently or afterwards, like whatever your pathway looks like after graduation, like you take pride and you take ownership in what that pathway looks like for you.
Perfect. Katie, you want to hop in?
I think risk taking is probably something. I mean, even as an adult myself, I definitely think I can take more risks, and I want to continue to expose our students to opportunities in which they can take risks as well.
All right. Charu, do you want to give us a point?
I think that, this was a very mature discussion that didn't really say, here are the breadcrumbs, you got to go to college, here's the playbook for life. I think that I thought was a very refreshing discussion. A lot of the points that Katie brought up and Talia brought up and Frank brought up and Justin brought up were all synergistic with really finding opportunities. I would encourage every young person to make a list of things that they wanted to do, and they really revisit that list, and not like, I want to be a doctor, not like that, I want to go to Thailand someday. Really make lists that kind of itemize your dreams, and you'll be surprised at how that guides you and motivates you to take the path that you need to go on.
Awesome. Justin?
Yeah, just a quick thought on an idea I read about a couple years ago, and I've tried to use it. And when I do use it, it usually pays dividends, which is to give first. So it's like this idea of giving first and not expecting anything in return, right? So I use this with potential clients. I use this with my network. It's this idea of like trying to create value for other people. And it really works when you're not when there's no strings attached, when there's not an expectation that you're going to get something in return. So I think when it comes to building like a good network, you'll find that the good people that you want in your network, if you provide them value in some way, especially early on when you're just meeting them, they'll return the favor often, many times over.
Okay, awesome. Talia, I'm sorry, Charu, I understand you have to drop. I want to thank you for joining us. And the rest of our panel, Frank Austin, Talia and Giano, Justin McLaughlin, Katie Ross. As an EYEJ volunteer, it has been a pleasure to host this week's episode. If you want to hear more about investing in your future, please be sure to follow the conversation on EYEJ's social media platforms. Additionally, be sure to check out our blog recap and behind the scenes podcast, where we will continue the conversation with our panelists. The EYEJ Speaks podcast can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast platforms. Thank you to the EYEJ team for all their phenomenal work on this initiative. Tara, Mega, Jiwen, Anna, Haley, Kenyatta, Pia, and Andre. I would like to also thank the founder and executive director, Maya Moore, for empowering young people throughout the city of Cleveland. If you like today's program or are familiar with some of our other phenomenal initiatives, such as the YODJ, Youth Online Discussing Justice, please be sure to support our hashtag Empower campaign and text the keyword Empower, that's EMPOWER, to 44321. Your contributions will ensure we can give a voice to over 1,500 youth annually, in addition to supporting families of the youth we serve who have been greatly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We will see you next week at 10 a.m., where we'll discuss a new topic featuring another wonderful slate of panelists. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Hope you have a great day. Stay safe.